Bob and Renee here, and we're going to do a little walk around Boyd Hill Nature Park, and we're going to take the watery route and see some different stuff. So if any of you have joined us on Facebook, trying to switch over to this platform. So this is just beautiful. We're standing a little bit off the trail here, and we're going to see what we can see, and also see how this platform works from wandering around with a cell phone. And this is one we don't get to talk about too often. This is bamboo, and this is one you might have in your backyard. This is a variegated bamboo. I used to grow this. It was actually quite fun. And there's a lot of debate as to whether bamboo has medicinal properties of different types and whether there's a toxicity with it. And there's actually a black bamboo over there, which is just way cooler. And so it's one of those things where everything is about the dosage and frequency that we do it and where it's growing. There has been some reports where there was arsenic in a well and there was an uptake of arsenic into the plant. And so generally we can use the leaves as a nice cooling tea. So bamboo is a Chinese herb that is used for cooling and is specific for cough and dry, sticky phlegm.
The old-timey folk Floridians would have said that you need to be drinking it to make your nails and your
Yeah.
hair grow correctly, and that the girls would have like long hair for in the humidity and all the hard work that they were doing, like back in the day when they were cattlemen. They would be drinking this during the summer and to help them be beautiful, like their skin and their nails and their hair.
That's interesting. So there's a couple of different parts. We talk about the leaf, and that's very mild. If we were to split this bark open, and so we actually can cut either end of this and heat up one side of it, and out of the other end will come sap, if you will, that can be gathered up, mixed with honey, and used for cough. I've actually done that a time or two. Actually, I was up at Sweetwater Farms, and we did that. And and we can also use shavings from the inside of it, and there's a little papery husk when you split open that. All of those are actually classically used Chinese herbs that we can find in our Medica book.
So think cough syrup with it
Yep,
when the sticky's coming out the top.
hot, sticky cough. And of course, we've got bamboo shoots, and I don't see any coming up. But the trick to harvesting bamboo shoots is to find it before it sees daylight. And a lot of times you can get a little bit extra by putting like a number 10 soup can over it. But you look for the bulging up of the leaves, and then you got to get a shovel out and start digging.
See any.
Yeah, I don't see any starting to come out, but it'll come up as a little comb. Then
We
you
haven't had a lot of water.
harvest it and steam it. We're going to wander on down the trail. It's interesting. This is one of those spots where we could find 50 plants
Let's do.
just by circling our arm around. You want to talk about cedar?
Yeah, because this is Alcida all over the
Oh
ground
yeah,
as
lots
well.
of
Yeah, all
lots of. Hey, somebody showed up. Hi.
Hey, you guys. So this right here is Sita, and we're arguing about which one it is. And based on one of our friends who does some foraging work, we think that this one's cordifolia. So it's SIDA, and it's something that this time of year is indicated in all aspects. The first thing is it's food. No matter what, it's food. Like, always remember that. I actually was just eating a piece of it. It tastes really delightful. It's part of the Malvaceae family, which means it's going to
Super
have,
mild. Yeah.
yeah, it's going to have that really nice, beautiful, juicy, like soft texture. It's not going to be woody at all. It'd be wonderful for greens, like all those big leaves over here. That's all it. And so, really thinking about how that fits into your food is one thing, but specifically leaves known for respiratory infections, for cough, for soothing inflammation. But on a bigger sense, the whole entire plant, all parts used differently for things like salmonella, pneumonia. And I have pneumonia a couple days ago, and just like by instinct and walking and eating this and just loving it. And so being able to know and prepare the roots effectively helps to bronchial dilate, that it does have an ephedrine content in it.
Which
That
it-
Bob likes to say it's like our favorite felony, that we can prepare this and
So
take
yeah,
it.
this plant is a felony to take across state lines. It was banned by the FDA. Pardon the politics, but I don't think plants should be illegal. Any of them?
Beautiful yellow pinwheel flower on it. And so that's what you look for, is that pinwheel flower. As we walk through, we're actually standing in what's a huge field of elder, and Bob seems to have found a wild yam.
Yeah, this is the air potato. So this is considered an invasive. It's a wild yam. And we do have two species of Dioscorias that grow here in Florida. Unfortunately, they're a little harder to find here near the coast. So this is one that's really caused some damage here in Florida because it is climbing up the trees and blocking out a lot of the natural vegetation. And that said, it does have its classic Dioscorea leaf shape, as well as all of the veins on the leaf emanating from the center, which will show you the Dioscoreas. And if you're up north in the southeast or anything, you can find these walking through the woods, especially up in the mountains. There's just tons of the wild yam growing there. Well, let's walk down here and see if one of our gator friends are here. Let's see what else we can find.
Slide in and slide out for some gators.
Don't try this at home.
Yeah, it's something that's very Florida-esque, that we come down here and look. Kind of looks like a game camera has been put up right there.
Oh yeah, you might be right. Either that or the gator has a stereo he likes to plug in, or an AC at night or something.
So I don't see them, but that doesn't mean anything. We just saw some babies the other day. We'll look for them. If we see them, we'll show them to you.
And this is a big wax myrtle here, isn't it? A swamp myrtle.
It is. It's swamp myrtle.
So there's some smell-o-vision there. So the myrtle, or this myrtle, can be used for everything from assisting in labor to making wax candles, or to do Olympia, where we use the aromatic properties of this for
cleansing and clearing. So think anything stuck. So anything that you have that
nice.
aromatic present to is anything that's stuck in your body. So putting it onto your chest, or washing your chest with a washcloth that's had a tea of it. When you have phlegm that's stuck, that's something that's important to know. Definitely has a bit of an antiseptic property to it. So using it as a countertop spray, not incorrect there. Boiling it into the air on your stove top as a safe room, like a protector, also completely correct, 100%. And so this wax myrtle is something that you should really get used to, especially here in Florida, all of the myrtles knowing all kinds of stuck phlegm, antiseptic properties, and just a helper when you have emotional stuck as well. Think trauma, like wound trauma and bruises.
Well, and it's it is definitely the distinct smell. If you ever go on an herb walk with us,
So nice.
you'll see that we reach out and sniff and huff a lot of plants or scratch a leaf. And it's one of the many ways that we can identify a particular plant, because sometimes the leaf shapes and margins are the same. And the only differentiation we have outside of a microscope is to smell and sometimes taste it, although that's a last resort.
It's part of what we call keying a plant out. It can have perfect shape or perfect bark, but if we get a scent we're not used to, then it's not that one plant we were thinking of that didn't have one.
Right. And so something like the wax myrtle, we're just starting to see the I don't know, for lack of a better name, the seed pods come out on it. So if you're walking out in a park or along the even in some of the small city parks, is a very common ornamental. Start reaching out and sniffing those plants.
And that's just poison ivy.
Yeah, right.
That should be the first one you ID.
And if you see these kind of gray little knobs along the stems, then it's something, and I'm looking, see if Renee can find us some.
Not quite yet. It's not time.
Yeah, another month or so.
Yeah, it'll be coming right there. Like there, it's starting to.
So we'll find it right along the edges there. So if you see that, go ahead and give it a smell.
Beautiful.
Are we going to walk out on the boardwalk?
I want to see if the gators out here for you.
Oh, yeah.
So we literally live in a swamp. Like this is a city, and Florida's a swamp. Everyone has to remember.
Look at those water lilies.
So we just had some gators hatch, and the mama holds up over here.
Where's that?
No, that's a really intrusive
Is that a log?
log.
Okay.
Yeah. So the mama and the babies were here the other day. I was trying to see.
sure
I
if
could
y'all
call
can
them if
see.
you guys want me to. sometimes they
Oh, I
come.
just heard somebody. Oh no, that's people.
Yeah. So sometimes they hold up in this area.
And I will say that invasives down there, those are actually a Chinese herb for any of you who are Chinese herbalists. I don't remember the name off the top of my head.
What would you use something like that in the water for? What do you think?
I'm going to say that is for clearing heat at the very least,
Yeah.
and
Doctrinal
nourishing
signature.
yin, if I remember right.
Do you think you use the top parts or the bulbs underneath?
And I'm not sure who that is, the mint moon pie, but they are taunting you to call the gator.
Oh, you want me to call the gator? Okay. So I'll have to see. If
Well,
I
let's do it
see
on the way back.
Yeah.
Let's do it on the way
I'll
back.
call the gator over in a minute. She gets mad at me and hustles right over. As we walk through
Oh, they
here,
closed the trail. No fun.
Bob and I have taken some of our friends through here that are from great herbalists, but from different parts
there's
of
some
the
of the
world.
groundnut.
Oh, Bob's excited about. He's got a new discovery.
So, for any of you who were
All of the
with
flowers.
us, I guess it was the last time we did this. Right at the end of the video, I
So excited.
found a vine, a plant that I had learned about 10 years ago on a hike with Green Dean, and had not ID'd it, not talked about it or seen it since then. And we found this vine, and here it is. And so it can come in groups of 5 or 7, I think it is. And so this is a odd pinnate flower presentation, or a leaf presentation, if I'm not. So that whole 7 little guys there, that's the whole.
Leaf.
That's one leaf. And I, for whatever freakish reason, I remembered what that was and started digging at the other end of it. And we found a bunch of edible ground nuts that are used for medicine. They were actually used for pussy, yucky wounds.
So Bob and I had gotten into this conversation about if you study Florida like ethnobotany, anything that was starchy would have been packed into like
And there's 5.
an amputation or some disgusting
And
wound.
there's 7.
So like a yucca or a potato, which we didn't have potatoes, but we certainly had yucca and we had ground nuts.
See if we can find a flower.
We would powder it up and pack it into a wound, and it would kind of do the same thing that a drain on a wound would do, and you would have a better chance of living and not having infections. And so we would definitely use it medicinally for that.
Hey, squirrel.
Absolutely. And so I think that that's important to note.
Do we have any of the
No.
corona-looking?
Not yet. We haven't seen sun exposure quite yet.
So it's funny. Like, we hadn't seen it. I just started growing it recently. We just found the ground nuts in the wild, and for the first time in 10 years for me. And it used to be a commercial crop here in the U.S. It was one of the major exports to Europe, and I won't say it's been rediscovered, but in my case, it has been. So today we took a different route on the trail, and all we see now is groundnut. The vines are everywhere, and we found the most beautiful blooms on it before we started the video. So we'll see if we can find some more blooms for you. So some beautiful, let's see if I can get a closer up of a beautiful swamp willow or Carolina willow.
Yeah, up here.
Oh yeah. And we got to keep watching for our smartweed too.
So there's the willow.
Oh yeah, that's a nice shot of the willow. So everybody knows about white willow bark, and we forget that we have our own native willow here, and very pliable, flexible stems on it. So it's used in a lot of basket making and furniture making. It's a prolific grower. We usually find it near water. It won't be in water always. And the inner bark of this, and I would argue even the leaves, I learned as a kid just eating the leaves, were high in vitamin C.
Let's see.
And of course salicylic acid. See if you can reduce your fever.
Oh, that's horrifying.
Yes, it's quite bitter.
Oh my gosh, my mouth just dried up like a desert.
Yeah. And
Oh
so if
my
you've ever
Lord.
chewed an aspirin,
And
The-
the bitter, not so much as my mouth drying up.
and so this is very specific
Ooh.
for a fever with pain. We find it is helpful for both. But I would say that it's also food. This has always been considered a forage food. And everything from the young leaves
say,
and
what parts?
twigs are primarily used, and then the bark is considered to be more medicine. And it always raises the question where we're like, but this isn't white willow bark, this is a swamp willow. And so that idea of herb of commerce.
Yeah.
And so there's the herb that somebody did some research on, or there's the herb that happened to be growing near the guy who wrote the book.
That's them right there.
Oh,
They
the
better be
gators?
careful. Yeah, because her babies are right in there. So that fluffy thing,
Yeah.
she came out. That's
I
her in
see
her
the
tail.
tail ridge. I don't know, they're
Yeah,
not going to be able to see it. I wonder if we can zoom.
They
Oh, we
better-
can zoom with
They
this.
need to be careful. There's people standing on the bank.
So that
Ooh, she's
little
big.
dark spot right there with my non-steady hands, that's a gator.
She's big. Yeah, she's not screwing around.
So when we talk about white willow bark, it's not so much that it's the best. It's just the one that they sell and it's written about in the books. Oftentimes it has to do with what was popular in Europe at the time a lot of the research and books were done, or so all of those oaks, they're all very similar in their presentation. The barks are going to be the same. Somebody asked about the difference between the different willows. So they really look identical. The biggest difference is like the weeping willow has a particular hanging down structure.
Do you want to talk about getting to know its personality?
Oh yeah, we can do that too. Hi.
Because the weeping willow really shows that
So,
personality.
so all of them are used for medicine, and really what's going to have the highest level of vitamin C or the highest level of salicylic acid in it really depends almost as much on the growing conditions, the age of the plant, and so forth, more so than whether it's a white or a black or a swamp willow. So it's really starting to recognize that leaf structure and bark structure that we expect to see on a willow. And then a tree will generally hold some of the same general characteristics. So if the tree that's 100 feet in your backyard is likely to have those same characteristics through much of the year, there will be some seasonal changes. There'll still be changes based on rain and weather. Oh yeah, there's a good bark shot.
That's its bark.
Oops.
And they look like this. Like most of them look like that.
Yeah, they all have that kind of cracked looking bark
And
on
their
it.
twigs will be smooth, but their elder bark will have a little bit of crack there.
Oh, now you can hear it. Oh no, that's the critter.
She's got a lower voice than that.
Yeah. And so that's one of those things where it's really go ahead and experiment with that willow, so you know the willow that's close to you.
We're really big. I mean, at least I am. And I think that you should know your bioregion. I don't think you should be beholden on electricity or the store to find your medicine, and that you should know what's in your bioregion. And then likely, like the same way, we should not be exploiting an area. Like we shouldn't be all running to get ginseng from this one holler. We should know the medicines, get to know the community you have and the elders you have, your plants. So for us to know our elders, our like our weeping willows, that's perfect. Then that's just not the one that's studied. That's the only reason it's in there.
Renee, you said something about knowing the personality of the willow or the plant. What do you mean by that?
So I am indigenously trained. Let's go back to the Bettany.
Okay.
I
We
am
walked right by it.
indigenously trained, and one of the things that's enforced upon us as being indigenous, like being traditional healers, is that we should really get to know our elders, and our elders are these plants. So it's way more important that we know their personality and who they are way before we know their medicine, because who they are is their medicine. And for willow in particular, it's all about being flexible and sturdy. So being able to bend instead of break under pressure and under pain and under emotional strain. That willow's all about being able to move and go with the flow and not break. They can give, but they don't break. And so using that thought process when you're trying to gather which thing we're going to use with pain or which plant that's going to support us in pain, that's a good way to start to get to know your bioregion, is just sitting with that plant and observing it and seeing how the plants interact and seeing how that's going to affect what's going on in the environment. And that's the way it's going to affect you, because you're not separate from this environment, you're part of it.
So it's not just matching a symptom to a plant, but it's also more about how you respond to that symptom to help you best choose a plant. Is that
Yes,
kind of the idea?
for sure. It's definitely not going to do you any good at all if you just pick this for pain. It's the same reason why Tylenol doesn't work for some people, that it just doesn't work that way, that we are all different and our pain is dynamic and different and the plants are dynamic and different. So you really need to get to know them. Right now we're walking into this field that just looks like a field of green for most people. I
Oh,
even
but
saw
this
some
is our
poison
secret
ivy.
patch. Don't tell anybody.
Yeah, but we're looking for, there's so many things here we could talk about, but we're looking for something that we call Bettany. And our Florida Bettany is phenomenal for neurological
There's
health,
some.
as well
It's
as
just a
its
single one. Let's
food.
not get him.
So there's another patch
Here's
right
a
there.
here's a nice patch. This has got
Yeah.
a nice clump of it.
Okay. And so it's food
It's
as
got some
well as
flowers,
neurological.
too.
So Bob's going to show this to you, and I'm going to start clearing this whole area out. So as he's showing you, I'm going to clear around like you can
Oh,
show
look,
him
you
that.
can already see
See that white
just
right
our
there?
little scraping up there. So we're looking for the white root.
Yeah. So we're going to look for the white roots. There's another one coming up right there.
And this is called rattlesnake
Look at
root.
that, Bob.
Oh, that's a little bit. Oh, wild.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
And so this is Bettany.
So look right there.
Whoa.
Look,
Oh,
you
yeah.
guys. Look at that.
Come on, keep
Look,
digging. How
look.
far does it go?
Oh my gosh, that's a huge one. So this is Bettany. I'm going to leave it in there because of respect.
Let's leave that as the mama.
See that? This is called rattlesnake root.
Florida Bettany or Stachys floridata.
So I'm going to cover that up out of respect for
Watch
them.
it, that's a little poison ivy
And that
right
is
there.
right there. And so we can all use all aspects of the Florida Bettany support us. That its leaves and its flowering tops do a lot to help settle down our nervous system and our spinal cord and our brain. The roots of it that look just like your spinal cord or a rattlesnake tail are wonderful, wonderful food, but also go a long ways to support your brain. It's old Florida medicine, foraging medicine. It's spectacular. It's part of what's called the Lamiaceae family. So it has a square stem. There's some flowers over here too.
Yeah, that's what I was taking pictures of there.
And so the square stem is,
Wait a second. Let me catch you.
is a good indicator of what it is. And so that's one of the ways that you can identify it. If you come to class with us, we will show you, like we will have you roll it in your hands and show you the square stem. So when you get these growing good, sometimes they like some wet feet, they'll come about up to your hip, and all parts of it are harvestable, all parts are edible. The roots are $100 a pound in New York City in upscale restaurants. And everywhere that you see underneath us, there's those roots underground because they had mowed down this whole field of it. So all of this is Bettany underneath here, and all of these things that are starting to pop back up are Bettany. So it really is everywhere.
So, weird question.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a light purple, violet-y kind of flower on this. So what does the violet
indicate
colored,
to me?
yeah, what's that flower color tell
So,
you?
Oh, that's beautiful. In Celtic lore and Druid herbalism, anytime we see, or the first plants that pop back up from the winter out of the sun, they come back up and pop back up. The first ones that come up have a bright bluey purple to them. And that's important to know because we would have been locked in the longhouse in the cold, dark winter, and we need our brains firing off and we need all kinds of stimulation. So all the things that pop up with those purple heads tend to be neurological supporters. So anytime you see purplies and blues and going into that pink range, we're supporting the spinal cord and the neurological health
So that
in general.
that herb in particular, then the Stachys floridata. Oh yeah, there's a nice little guy.
That one
Florida Bettany then
is-
is used for neurological, specific for the nerves and spinal cord. It's an adaptogen that helps with stress.
a doctrine of signature for it.
Yeah.
Maybe that for sure. The fact that it looks like a spinal cord and it has that purple flower
Yeah.
is just amazing. We have some, like that's some pretty nice ragweed.
It's ambrosia. Get it right.
That ragweed is fine. So this guy right here that you see popping up everywhere, this is all ragweed. Bob calls it ambrosia, but to me
That's
that's
its Latin name.
decadent dessert that the gods eat. But this is definitely ragweed.
So this is what causes some of your seasonal allergies. This will get a good 6-8 feet tall, and it's when it goes into bloom, the pollen that comes off of there is what causes all of your seasonal allergies.
It's considered to be an artemisiaid in that the leaf looks like an artemisia leaf or a mugwort leaf. but it doesn't have necessarily the really strong silver underside.
It is a little
It's a
silvery,
little
but
bit,
not
but
as
not enough to
pronounced.
ID it like a mugwort.
So it's frequently misidentified
Yes.
as mugwort or sweet
Absolutely.
Annie even,
Yeah.
Artemisia annua.
100%. So it's important to know if you can get it. There's a great argument and debate in the herbal world. If you can get it before the flower, they say it's the best help for seasonal allergies. And people say you have to have the flower, and some people say it will cause the seasonal allergies. It doesn't matter. It's just correct for seasonal allergies. So definitely go for it. And all parts would be used. And when you get it without the flower, the root parts would be stronger. So it's just something to get to know that we think that these are scourges and they're there to support the community in all aspects. If you get to know them, you would have the medicine for you before the season changed and you would have allergies. Then you'd be able to take care of it if you reacted. So it's something that's right there for us. That Bettany all moved this way as
Yeah.
they started spraying.
Yeah, it's running there. Unfortunately, the park here does have a habit of spraying stuff that we're not a big fan of. That's something we plan to work with them here as soon as we get done with the COVID crap, is to try to get them to either stop using Roundup or to look for an alternative or do it very selectively, as opposed to the obvious indiscriminate spraying that goes on currently. Because it's narrowed
Very
where,
random.
yeah, it's narrowed where we're able to even consider harvesting in here, and obviously doesn't do a lick of good from both a whatever they're trying to accomplish or from an environmental or health aspect of it as well. The magnolia,
Yeah, if you want to.
yeah, sure. We don't
So-
see magnolia too often.
So there's like this little baby magnolia, and even though it's giant, it totally is a baby.
It's a healthy looking guy.
And magnolia is a support plant both in Chinese, Ayurvedic, and Western herbalism. And I know for Chinese it's very specific, but for Western herbalism, almost all of the parts are used that we would use an inner, or we would gain support from the inner bark of like one of these stems here instead of cutting into the tree, or the leaf, or the flower, or the calyx from the flower, like this huge seed pod that comes up. And all of it would be supportive for phlegm and cough and asthma and just that scratchy throat. That's the kind of thing that we would use it for, making a cough medicine, not a respiratory infection, but more very much geared to cough. What about you?
So this is classically known as two different herbs in Chinese medicine. One is Xinyin Hua, which would be, well, this is kind of the start of it here,
I'm trying to
is
find
the
one.
flower. Yeah, we kind of got one right here.
He's such a baby.
It's a little flower bud. This isn't quite open, so after the flower goes away and there's a little bit left over, very aromatic, and that's used to guide to the nose or for sinus infection. And I'm just going to go to the bark here and see if I can do this. So Hopo is used for qi stagnation. It's very drying, has a downward action, and specifically for things caught in the throat. And what it is we would find at least a 10-year-old tree and draw down and pull off the inner bark is classically what's done. If we girdle the tree, if we go around all the way this way, it strangles the tree and it will die very quickly. So we always have to go this way.
So let me ask you, you said it has a downward motion. So what does that indicate? Like, how does that correspond with the folk medicine that I just said in the cough?
Yeah, let me actually answer this question. Could Bettany be used for spinal issues, especially with MS
Yes.
or things like that?
Specific to MS.
Yeah, so definitely, because it is considered nourishing, the root in particular would be helpful, but all parts of that Bettany could be used.
So you know, I have a tradition for the past maybe 10 years, no, more like 20 years. So like say, you know, between 15 and 20 years of using it for MS clients with great success with a formula.
So, you know, it is, if we're harvesting hundreds of tons, they're more likely to go ahead and do that. But for our home use, we usually don't recommend that you cut the main trunk like that. What we can do is carefully prune a branch, one of the larger branches off, and then go ahead and strip that whole branch down. Although it still injures the tree, at least we're not doing a major injury to
pretty
it.
well. Like we don't see too bad of a difference. So that downward motion, how would that help with cough? Why would it like back up the folk remedy of it?
So one of the things we think about in Chinese medicine is the direction the energy is supposed to go, the qi is supposed to go. And so a cough is your energy going the wrong way a lot of times. So what it does is it redirects that energy down. But it's also sometimes, and it goes a little bit more into the language that you speak, But when we have stress and phlegm combined, that we get the feeling of something caught in the throat, what we call plum pit syndrome. This is one of the major herbs for that. Oh, yeah. So plum pit, you'll actually, it's so easy to diagnose because somebody will sit there and go endlessly when we're doing an intake with somebody, and they've already been to the doctors and the ear, nose, and throat, and they go, there's nothing wrong. You don't have a fishbone caught in your throat. And literally, when we use a formula where the magnolia bark is the primary herb, we find within a few days that goes away, usually permanently. But in that same idea, it's people who are choking on their own words, who are unable to express themselves for any number of different reasons, that it can be indicative of a larger issue that needs to explore that. So Renee just discovered this beautiful blooms.
Come over here. There's more, and they're oriented like you might get. Like, can you see that?
Oh yeah, these beautiful blooms are from Beauty Berry. Let's see if it'll focus on that. There we go. There's a beautiful focus on that. So Beauty Berry, seems like everything's for cough today.
Well, it's what's going around, right?
So
the plants know.
this will produce a light purple berry that's edible. I think of it more as a decoration on a plate, or throw it in some yogurt or some cereal. But the leaves are used as insect repellent. We can also use the stems and roots, and probably the leaves, as a fish poison. The chemical in there, when put into a still pond, will cause a paralysis of the fish. It doesn't poison them or kill them. It literally stops their lungs and gills from working properly, and so we can harvest the fish.
So because of that, like that, thinking of that same vein, for the western side of using this, it's an antitussive. So it settles down your coughing. It helps to relax your bronchial passages when they're being triggered. So we've always used this for a slight cough syrup type remedy, that not anything that's going to kill the germ. It's just going to settle down like Robitussin, antitussive. It's going to settle down that cough, and you could see where it would help with the oxygenation of the fish, like settling down their ability to flap their gills properly, where it wouldn't be poisoning the fish, so you wouldn't have to worry about that when you ate it. It just would be making it so they didn't flap their gills as much, so they'd float to the top. So all parts of this can be used. The other thing, it's really soft, and Bob said it's a bug repellent, which it absolutely is a great bug repellent. But because of this, I grew up knowing that this is what we used as toilet paper if you were in the woods, because wouldn't you want a soft bug repellent being wiped on your butt if you had to hang it out in the woods? We don't want any ticks getting in there. And so it's something that redneck toilet paper is the #1 use of this for sure in my family, like growing up that way, hog hunting and being out in the woods. But it's a wonderful cough medicine. And again, like the magnolia, the inner bark, but all the berries, the leaf, all parts are completely used. And it's something that it grows all over, is bioregionally indigenous to Florida as well as several other places.
So I have to apologize. I'm just now figuring out how to use the chat here, and it's still a little iffy. But two questions. Let me answer this one first. Do you, oops, no, I don't want to do that. I want to, do you just use the leaves and rub them on you? Or is there some way to put them into a spray?
Both.
Yeah, both.
Yeah, so you can do a process that would create a hydrosol. And a hydrosol is kind of like a very ecologically safe essential oil that has more water in it. You can just do, you don't need any distilling equipment. You can just use a pot and pan to do it. And we actually probably will have a video out soon of me doing a hydrosol, because I have to do it for a class that's coming up. Or you can literally just take the plant, like if you're out, and rub it all over you. But the mistake that everybody runs into, it works wonderfully, but the mistake that people run into is they don't reapply, and they don't rub it on their clothes.
Right.
And so it's got the effectiveness of DEET, but you have to continue to reapply, and you have to make sure you get like your back where your shirt is.
Make sure your friend rubs it on too, in other words.
And so you just keep it and you rub it whenever you feel like it. You can kind of crunch it up with your fingernail. It works wonderfully, and we use it and have used it that way for many years, as well as in a spray.
So one of the earlier questions, and I'm going to come back to that one, Katrina, is what kind of herbs can we use for mucus kind of conditions? And
Well, it depends. Yeah,
So
that's like a big question.
yeah, and so there's a number of different ways to look at it. Ultimately it comes down to how come you're getting it.
That wax myrtle.
A lot of times it comes back to food. And so figuring out what foods are triggering that mucus secretion.
Or if we had like the COVID thing, maybe she's
Yeah.
asking because of respiratory issues.
But what we've got is the body produces mucus for a very specific reason. There's an irritant, something that's causing inflammation. The body tries to wash it away. And so we have to in order to fix it, we have to identify that. And then when we go from there and we start like, what kind of herbs are helpful for that? We have to look at what's the state of the mucus, because if it's dried mucus where it's really congealed, then we have to moisten in order to get rid of it. But if it's really what I call the drippy faucet out of the nose or out of the butt or out of wherever, then we can look at aromatic and astringent herbs. And so it's not so much as what's the right herb, it's what's the action of the herbs and matching that up with the individual and how those symptoms are manifesting. And as Renee said, it is a general rule, aromatics can be really good for that unless you're in an immune flare-up, an autoimmune kind of disorder, or really dry, red, inflamed tissues.
So like earlier we were showing you the wax myrtle, and definitely that would have been an old-timey thing to pack onto your chest to invigorate that phlegm. But if it was stuck and dry in there, if you were very hot and you didn't have enough moisture, like hydrating, they always tell you when you're sick, drink more fluids, then that phlegm's not coming out no matter what. And so that would be kind of a wasted plant for you. So we have to make sure that we're formulating properly for your energetics. Combination of
and
stuff.
so if we're looking at dry stuff, anything in the mallow family, in particular marshmallow, if it's gut related, cedar, slippery elm. If it's more digestive, we might start to look at things that are bitters to improve the bile secretions and the function of the liver itself. So looking at things that are in the thistle family and just bitter things in general, but we oftentimes forget that there's all these nasty thistles. We might see some style thistle along here, but artichoke is a thistle and specific for things like cholesterol. So we can, enjoy the heck out of that.
If you're sick,
yeah.
We have to figure that out too.
The drippy faucet kind of thing, I find that the anything in the Laminaceae, the mints, the aromatics do very, very well with that.
I was going to stop and eat this, but do you want to talk about it before I eat it?
Sure. So this is Smilax, and somebody just asked a question about Smilax, actually.
So I'm going to pinch this off and hold it up in the sun so you can see it, and then I'm going to eat it. And so this is what we're looking at. I'm going to throw it back in my mouth.
And I got to read that question if I can find it again.
Smilax, any species of Smilax that's here, is really supportive of anything in the lower part of your body that's infected, specific to urinary tract. It does help other things, but urinary tract it has an affinity for. The tops of it, the sprouts of it, taste just like asparagus. They're lovely. They're so yummy. And I eat them almost offensively. I eat them so much. I have to apologize to the plant. I take so many sprouts from it. That it's just a wonderful anti-inflammatory, very specific to the urinary tract of both male and female. Any kind of damp, cloudy, hot infection, that's the thing we would think of. We do use different parts, different doctrines of herbalism use different parts. We use the root in particular, that's kind of like a tuber, but I would not be afraid to use all of it, all the way through the leafy parts. And I also wouldn't be afraid to eat it as food if you had the propensity of having UTIs or those kind of infections. And it's just lovely, and any species will do, for sure.
So there's a question about getting a rash, or I'm going to just say adverse reaction from any of these. And as a general rule, you can have a food sensitivity or an allergy to any plant.
Yeah.
And so if you tend to have a lot of food sensitivity, chronic digestive issues, things like that, it's sometimes good to try a very small amount to start and see how you respond, or at least rub it on your skin. Inside of the lip is a classic.
Inside of the arm.
Yeah.
If you get a huge red hive from rubbing it on the inside of your arm, that's the way to tell.
But what can also happen, and it can kind of fool us, is especially a lot of our strongly flavored, for it's a nice way of putting it. Some of our strongly flavored plants, some of our aromatics, and what I call killy shit.
That's Bob's official doctor talk.
That if we have things like SIBO, chronic candida, yeast infections, that when we eat some of these stronger foods that are crossing that food medicine barrier, that a lot of times we'll get die-off, and that will cause nausea, a rash, runny poop, all kinds of interesting, and so that's not really an adverse reaction.
Especially Americans totally get like crazy about vomiting and pooping, and that's really what was supposed to happen. That's not an allergic reaction, that's a correct reaction usually.
So if you have to go to work the next day kind of thing, and you're out wild foraging or you've harvested some medicine, what you might do, it's all about dosage. A little bit will gently, slowly work on improving all of those issues. But if you do a lot, you may not be going to work the next day, and it can literally feel like you've got the flu. That die-off, Herx response, Herxheimer response, that's almost normal. And you mentioned the Smilax and the beauty berry. If I were to choose two of those, if you consume them, oh, look at that. I wonder if there's some fruit on there. We'll definitely talk about that.
It's all okay.
Then it's probably the beauty berry, just because it's...
Berries make you have a stomach ache and
Yeah, it's not abnormal to have a little bit of a reaction to that for some people.
Berries generally are on the high list of if you're going to have a reaction. Berries, strawberries, all kinds of berries. One, cause hives and rashes. Two, stomach aches and poop. Runny poop, and it's very normal. You just ate too many berries.
Terry, I'm just going to guess with that last name of Pinder that you're from the Bahamas, so welcome, man. So yes, with the Smilax, it's interesting. The tips, I haven't tried to, hold on. I haven't tried to dry the tender tips. I think those are going to be best fresh. But from the medicine aspect, there are many Smilaxes that are used for medicine. In Jamaica, we have sarsaparilla, the Smilax medica. This is we have like 3 or 4 different species at least of Smilax here in Florida, and I would say in the Bahamas as well. And so the root is the strongest medicine.
But I want to tell you, like Bob's saying the root is the strongest medicine, and I'm speaking specifically, who was it? It was Terry.
Yeah.
If you have this by you, I'm more than 5th generation Floridian and very tropical, and if you have this by you, I encourage you to eat it. Like,
yeah, eat it fresh.
It's wonderful.
But they were asking specifically about drying
about
it.
Medicine, and
about
it's
drying
something
it.
That's going to help it. Like that's why we wouldn't dry it. It would be part of our food. Oh, isn't it lovely? So this is another thing that Bob's showing you is wild cucumber. And believe it or not, that thing in his hand is a cucumber.
And it tastes just like the best cucumber you ever ate.
So when you come across something like this and you think of the big plant cucumber, we could use something that was similar to cucumber for all kinds of cooling action. Because if you think about cutting open a cucumber that came right off the vine in the middle of summer, it's still very cold. So if you needed a cooling action or a moisture, like you had a dry fever and you couldn't get it to come down, it would be completely appropriate in the middle of summer to grab this off, mush it up, and put it as a poultice on the back of somebody's neck, and to feed it to them. It's beautiful.
There's so many
but
here.
For us, we just love it. It's a snack. It's so delightful, and it's covering this whole tree. Like, look at it. It's so sweet to find it out. And everybody doesn't realize
they look like little baby watermelons. See how it's got that mottled skin? These should never be eaten once they start to get soft or turn black. Unless you want to purge like you never purged before.
I mean, maybe that's the thing that you're wanting to have happen, so they're indicated that way.
Well, what?
For sure.
Super yummy.
Yeah, I'll take that one. You can have that one.
Right.
Super good. And you can see Bob and I clearly aren't afraid of just eating. Oh, it's so good.
So the Smilax root is the stronger medicine. It's it's an anti-inflammatory, almost steroidal-like in action. It's for phlegm. It's, as Renee had said earlier, that Smilax is specific for the lower body. So there's actually a tuber.
Dig one up?
Yeah, we might find one out here a little while. So that tuber is hard as a rock and can get quite large. And so that is very normal to slice and dry, or we can dry it whole, and then it has to be decocted. You have to boil the crap out of it in order to get the medicine out. The heat does not destroy the medicine in that.
When we have hard parts, we usually have to have a hard process to get the medicine out. So that's either a really harsh tincture or what we would call a decoction, which would involve a boil or a series of boils. If we get to one up here, I'll try to dig one out for you so you can see what it looks like. But all parts used very specific to the root, like Bob said, and it's more like a tuber or a corum, what we'd call a corum. And so we'll find one and I'll dig it up for sure. Look at the banana leaves.
I know, they're beautiful.
Love it. It's so funny that you guys, this is in the middle of a city. That this is just a couple miles from our home, and we think it's very much a privilege to have this kind of preserve in the middle of the city. We can see the tall buildings from here, so we feel very lucky for sure. So let's go.
Whoops.
Holding off a second.
Oh, sorry.
I'm gonna find a Smilax.
Hey, John.
I'm gonna find a Smilax and start digging, and you can find it. Okay.
What's this on? Oh, you mean like YouTube? I literally have no idea how this is showing up for everybody to view this.
It's on YouTube. It's the way we have it. So
But that cucumber, we'll find that growing on hedges and fences.
To the Smilax, and I'll dig it.
No, we'll find it. We can just walk along
This
there.
way?
Yeah. We can go over to the giant armadillo.
Okay. Do you want to stop at something like the cedar?
Sure.
So this is just us. We have a YouTube channel, and every time we go out to walk, we just can't help it. All we do is talk about plants. So we decided just to air it for you all because everybody always asks us. And especially the tropical medica, there's not a lot out there, and we both know so much about it that we just want to share it with everybody.
Oh, there's a huge cedar.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I said I knew we were going to walk up on her.
Yeah.
We don't have to do it.
Oh, you know, we didn't talk about elder, and there's a pretty elder there. Lots of bees on there, maybe.
This guy right here, this is elderberry. This is an umbral of white flowers that will turn into berries.
I was right. The pinders,
Yeah.
from Green Turtle and Cherokee Sound.
There you go.
There's
the berries.
So this is the berries. These are not ready. We don't want the green ones. We want to wait till they turn black.
So one of the identifying marks is that there's one strand with one bunch of flowers. So there's one umbrella, like an umbrella. And that's one of the ways you don't mix it up with something that's poisonous.
So we just went canoeing on the Little Manatee River like 2 days ago or something. And that was a wild and woolly trip. And we used to consider it a treat when we would find water hemlock. The poison hemlock. Yeah. And the entire way there was more poison hemlock than there was elder.
Yeah.
And it was really nice to be able to say, we can distinctly tell the difference. We're like, you look at that and you go, that's not right.
Elder.
This is the good stuff. This will not kill you.
So elderberry in particular, the berries are very precisely used to help your immune system during a cold. Old Florida medicine, we would have just eaten it like a syrup on pancakes, probably some buckwheat pancakes that had the flowers in them. When you use it for medicine, or when you ask for its support for medicine, what you're asking for is to support your own immune system working correctly. So that's called immune modulating. If you add the flowers in specifically, they're what we call diaphoretic. So they help you to vent the heat of a fever to the outside of your body, and then will chill the outside of your body. So they could be considered a refrigerant as well. So what would have happened is we would have taken that umbral, dipped it in the pancake batter, pulled off the stem, the flowers would have been in the pancake, and then we would have drizzled the syrup on top and fed that to a sick house. So not only the child that wasn't sick, but the child that was would be getting something that was anti-inflammatory.
And that's important to say.
medicine.
It's specifically used for children, so we consider it a very safe herb. And
Special.
You'll read some really interesting things. The leaves, the stems, the roots are considered toxic. They have cyanidic compounds in them.
There's some old-timey literature about using them for things, but kind of like apple a day keeps the doctor away. When we used to eat the seeds, those little microdoses of cyanide used to be believed to help ward off cancer tumors and things like that. So we really, really, really tell everybody no green parts for any reason, only the flowers if you have a fever, and then the berries whenever you need them. And so it's just something to think about. We don't have to, but I just wanted to show you.
We can do that. We can do a couple more and then run away.
So we just walked by this patch that I just thought was beautiful. This beautiful purple flower that's down here. this is a plant that's called spiderwort. And spiderwort is food. That's the first thing I want you to remember. I'm going to break a piece of it because I want you guys to see. Oh, that was perfect.
Yeah, that's a great one.
So look at
yeah,
that.
gross
like that
and sticky.
gooey. So what would we use that for? Anything that was hot and inflamed and dry. So it would be a bug bite. It would be GERD, like heartburn.
It's, you know, another one, it's also used as a dye. And so it creates a nice light purple stain that we can use for clothing and other crafts and so forth.
Very high in essential fatty acids. It's a wonderful food chopped up in a salad. Very cooling, really specific to inflammation of the gut and external inflammation. And sprinkling those purple flowers on the top of a cacao cake, just an amazing thing. Just beautiful. Like, who wouldn't want to eat a bunch of purple flowers? Like, that's just something we need to.
And remember that purple violet color has a positive effect on the nervous system as well. So
definitely that goo very much reminds me of myelin sheath, like that sticky fat that goes around. Our heads are big tubs of fat, so that gooiness and that essential fatty acids that are in there, I have no doubt that it doesn't help our neurological system be in its top prime, like exactly what it's supposed to be. Definitely helps with inflammation. Which way do you want to go?
No, let's go that way. We never go that way.
Yeah, I thought it was a new little pathway.
So Terry, weird question. Are you still in the Bahamas or are you in the US?
As we walk, you guys, we're seeing
Mucilaginous means kind of slimy.
So it's
like, think oatmeal.
Mucilaginous, demulcent, and emollient are all varieties of Slimalicious. So think okra, actually. Like, okra's a good one. As we walk by, because we're in Florida and people always ask, we're going through 3 different kinds of palms.
And actually, I think you spelled that right. I'm sorry. I apologize. My spelling is not that great.
So when something's mucilaginous, think okra or aloe, and it helps to reverse any condition. So that does opposite of that. So if you had an ant bite that was raised and red and angry, it's going to soothe that, smooth it down, and cool it off. So I was showing you the different poems because we do have things like Seoul Palmetto Berries.
Ooh.
And identifiers.
So this is kind of interesting.
What'd you find?
So there's the wrong kind of, but
the purslane?
There's a very small correct type of purslane.
So Bob's talking about purslane. So I'll show you 2 of them. So this is the first one. That's the first purslane.
So this is the one you want. When people talk about Portulaca oleifera,
very edible.
This is the one we want. This
very
is
lovely.
This is food. This is great medicine. This is a Chinese herb called maqixiang.
Also high in essential fatty acids. This one.
This is also Portulaca.
Bitter as hell.
But not the one we want. We consider this one mildly toxic.
It's gross.
And so
not food.
Narrow, thin, not as slimy. Bitter in the mouth, not enjoyable at all.
Versus yummy, chewy, cold.
This one's yummy, slimy, round, paddle-shaped leaves. This is purslane, Portulaca oleifera, with a yellow flower. And this will get large. This is in, you'll find this in construction sites. This is in sandy, full sun, salt tolerant.
Clearly, we just walked up on it accidentally.
I hate to say it, you could find it at Home Depot. Don't buy your plants from Home Depot.
Nope. Nope. Especially not the pink ones.
Right. Oh, Terry, the only reason I asked, I think we're going to plan maybe in the next year. We haven't gotten any details yet. We're hoping to come down to the Bahamas to do a weekend intensive, I think. And I don't know whether Nassau or Freeport, if Abaco is built up back enough. Certainly would love to go back to Abaco and teach there.
So as we walk through here, you're really getting a clear indication of what old Florida looked like and looks like when you get into those spaces. And when we do these walks, it's really to show everybody like what's around them and what you're able to learn just from being out here. And the information you can gather from the plants are so helpful to your body. Like, remember, we're living in community always. And we're part of this plant community.
Let's find one more to talk about. Let's see if you see any fruit on the palmetto, or maybe
I saw the empty.
So this is Seoul Palmetto. Let's see if there's any green
Watch
fruit.
Out for snakes, Bubba.
Yeah.
There's green. There's green on there.
Okay,
see 'em.
there's some small fruit. Those have got a long way to go.
Be careful.
So this is a type of Seoul Palmetto, and what it's really referring to is the very sharp toothed uh, edges on this stem. There, you can kind of see it. That will rip your hand open. And interestingly enough, it has a flat tip
That's how you.
on the, oops, there we go, on there, where there's other types that have a more pointy tip. And let's see if we can get one of these to snack on. Can you hold the phone for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. So Bob and I both know this as food and medicine, and he's going to end up cutting himself.
No.
He's going to find a piece that we can pull out to snack on. If it doesn't want to come, then it's not going to, so don't. Oh, he did it. He's such a manly man. So this part is almost like a heart of palm.
It is a heart of
I
palm.
grew up with it eating the actual heart of the palm, which we would call swamp cabbage. And it's something that is part of my life and something I loved very much. So, but the medicine of it is something that we need around both male and female. Do you want to talk about Seoul Palmetto berries?
And so I never like to waste it, so I kind of got it down to the end. It's still nice to
Seoul Palmetto is our last plant.
chew on, but then we can use it to keep the flies, little doctor flies, the mosquitoes off.
What about the medicine of Seoul Palmetto? Not about flies.
So, Seoul Palmetto is an interesting one. It's supposed to taste like crap. We want the berries just as they're starting to turn black.
Rotten soap.
Yeah, it'll literally taste like if soap went bad, that's what it would taste like. It's a very soapy, and it's got saponins in it, so you can actually wash your clothes in it if you wanted to.
It will bubble up in the water.
Yeah. And what we find is everybody knows it for male prostate hyperplasia, enlarged prostate. That's just fancy talk. And one of the things, and you'll read a lot about aphrodisiacs. It'll be an energy boost. And what we believe is happening, we know one of the functions of Seoul Palmetto, one of the major functions, is that it helps with the used up testosterone. What happens, we have two types of testosterone in the body, and men and women both have it. The free testosterone, which is what we use for libido, male sexual characteristics, things like that, as the body consumes and uses that, what will happen is we end up with a new product called dihydrotestosterone. That can actually cause inflammation, phlegm, baldness, and can cause fatigue if the ratio between free testosterone and the used up dihydrotestosterone, if that ratio between the two gets used up. So the Seoul Palmetto helps with the clearance of that used up testosterone, so it gives the feeling of more energy, more strength, and ultimately the reduction of the swelling of the prostate. And it's not uniquely a male herb. Women use it as well, in particular if they've got PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. Because in a case with PCOS, we'll see an odd characteristic of an elevated testosterone. We'll see baldness, weight gain, more muscular, deeper voice, and more facial and body hair, which is not normally something we associate with women. And so they're not well equipped. Their body doesn't process that used up testosterone well, and we'll see all of those issues starting to materialize. So the Seoul Palmetto can be a great addition to formulation for PCOS, but any number of other issues where we feel like the testosterone maybe is a little out of whack. Well, that's the biggest stuff I
Well
use it
said,
for.
Bob Linde.
Too much.
I think that we're at the end. I don't think we're going to talk anymore about this. What I will say is we have a YouTube channel where we do this all of the time, and we're very specific about it, as well as lots of other things. So
And the school?
go to the YouTube channel. The name of the YouTube channel is the school's name, which is here. Turn around.
Tradition School of Herbal Studies.
It's this right here. Tradition School of Herbal Studies.
And if you ever want to take any of our classes, at the moment we're doing them all online because of the COVID fund. So our 101 Western Herbal 101 class is coming up next weekend, if I'm not mistaken.
And well, if you get to us quick enough, we'll send you your herbs and your curriculum book, and we'll go live with that, and I'll be there to answer any questions. And it's basically keeping you out of the Walgreens. It's body systems and plants for every body system, enough that you're not going to hurt yourself, and it's going to keep you out of the Walgreens. So just hit the school up. We're the only ones with that name, so if you Google us, it will come up. and shoot us an email saying that you're interested. And if not, we'll try to get you to some kind of information near you if you're not by us and that doesn't suit you.
You know, we've got a ton of videos on there. We've got a ton of videos on the Facebook page. We're going to be opening up the student clinic here at the end of May, unless anything unforeseen happens.
We also have more than 20 new student practitioner videos out that will be 20 to 30 minutes a piece or so, some a little shorter, that we have them right at the end of them graduating. They need to teach and own their medicine, and those just all got posted a week or so ago. And so absolutely positively, any of those resources are there for you, both traditional healing, Chinese herbalism, and Western herbalism. So hit us up with any information you might need. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until then, do you want to say bye?
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
See you next time, ever so randomly. Oh, no, we're on the other side.
I know. I was showing them the land.
All right, let me see if I can figure out how to stop this.
Sure.
Okay, no, that's not what I'm trying to do.
Just push that.
I'm afraid.
Sure.
Sure. Oh, I bet I should have done that earlier.
There you are. You gotta get that looked at.